Secretary Lopez is on his way, so I'm just here to make sure that we're tracking on everything we need to from DHS.
Great.
They were supposed to come back. We're all laughing. My kids will tell me. Yeah, just say that they are supposed to have a microphones, but we'll be loud. I can unmute on mine too.
You need a permission, babe.
That's when
Hello. Hey. Oh, yes, one of them.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
I'm very much with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I got that. Yeah. Yeah, I actually, yeah, I got a.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fine. I guess so.
Thank you. And they would pass on the right.
Yeah, they're right. Yeah.
They would pass on.
I'm gonna wait just one more minute. I think Commissioner Tolentino is on her way. We have any baseball fans on the commission? Anybody excited about the World Series?
Oh, good.
No, a little bit. It could be historic. It could be historic. Well, you have the Dodgers. That's always historic. And you have this guy. Are you a baseball fan? Oh, okay. You don't know Superman now plays baseball.
Yes, he does.
That's incredible.
I go to a big fun.
I'm looking forward. I think it's probably two teams playing in a World Series as far apart from each other as you can possibly get. Right? You have Los Angeles and Toronto. But you're talking 6-hour flights, right? To get from one city to the other. And so it'll be interesting to see whether just that affects the quality of play, really.
I guess this is a new girl.
No, not yet. Your looks to God's ears.
Always.
That's time of the day.
Oh, yeah, everything. Saturday and all. Pretty good playing.
All right, I'm going to call the meeting to order. Thank you all for being with us, both here in Crownsville and remotely. Unfortunately, some of us, I think, we don't have microphones. I have rarely needed a microphone in my life, having grown up in the traffic in East Baltimore. So I'll ask anyone who speaks to keep your voice. As I used to say to witnesses in court, use your best outdoor voice. That's how I would communicate the need to speak up. But welcome. I hope everyone is well and enjoying the fall and looking forward to the coming end of the year. The agenda is in front of us, and it's a special meeting in the sense that what I anticipate later in the meeting is that we're going to have a report presented by one of the work groups that, if adopted, will constitute the first finding and recommendation by this commission. And I know that the work group has put a lot of work into it, and it's been the subject of a great deal of attention, appropriately so, and I look forward to our discussion. In the meantime, I invite your attention to the minutes of our September 11th, 2025 meeting. You've had a chance, I think, to review those. And so I will entertain any suggestions for revisions, additions, or changes, if any. There being none, I will entertain a motion for approval of the meeting minutes, followed by a second. Moved and second. It's been moved and second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you very much. The minutes are approved. We're still waiting for, hi, Judge. We're still waiting for Secretary Tolentino. I'm sure she'll be here very shortly. We'll move on to work group updates. And why don't we start with the shortest one, fatality review. Right? Right.
Carlotta's here as well. And we have had one fatality review session, I'll call it.
Okay.
I was on extended medical leave, so I've got to credit them for really pulling it all together in terms of the way we were going to conduct the reviews. And we have a lot of catching up to do. So we had our first, and at the conclusion of it, we felt that we needed more information. And so we're collaborating with the Department of Juvenile Services, who is the collector of the information. Several members requested different types of information. And so we're meeting on the 30th to go over that. And we'll set another fatality review, which will complete our first. And then I think we'll be prepared to give a presentation to the larger group.
Excellent. Excellent.
Carlotta,
any,
have anything?
anything at all?
Okay.
Okay, great. How about education and merit exchange?
Yep, Eric, regretfully is not here today, he's on vacation, but good for him, but I'll do it for both of us. We've actually had a couple of meetings since the last overall commission meeting in September. We had actually a panel of members of this commission and others. Carlotta was there, as well as Sheriff Baker was there, and Michelle Kim from the Baltimore's Public Defender's Office was there. Sort of talk about juvenile justice processes, so they're learning more. All this is rooted in a desire to, from a public education standpoint, lay out how does the system actually work? How does it work from front to back, so that we can understand how the kids actually first come into the system, not just meaning how they first get to DGS intake, but all the stuff that happens before they get to DGS intake. What happens when the case is not diverted, goes into the prosecutor's office? How do those decisions get made? What happens in court? So we're working on both an infographic. So we've had a big assist from say a board path, and we're working on how to visualize the way the system works, while also right now to really have the details of how all the pieces and all the steps of the juvenile justice system work, so that we're able to have a clear picture of how it is. Ideally, we would have that with data that allows us to understand the full universe of not just how many kids come to DJS intake each year, but all the kids who fall out before that as well. Come in contact with law enforcement, but never get arrested, those who get arrested and never get DJS and so forth. So we're trying to lay all that out, though we started. Oh, thank you.
Oh, great.
I was using my outside voice anyway, but not well enough. So
Thank you.
I'm glad to have them. So anyway, we are pushing ahead in that. It feels in some ways like we've felt a little bit like we're stuck in the mud a little, like we wish we'd gotten further so far. We're very interested in being able to, I think, to serve this commission, to have a system process map that everyone on this commission can go, yep, this is how it works. This is what juvenile justice in there looks like, whether good, bad, or otherwise, but this is how it presently works, that we're able to then talk about what is and what isn't working on all the different steps. So that's a big part of the public education.
Thank you. Thank you. I was curious, are you aware of this event next week. I kind of stumbled across this. It's a judiciary sponsored public forum on juvenile justice.
Where's it at?
And it's happening in Baltimore City. It's going to be by Zoom only Wednesday. I asked Suki to send a copy of this flyer to all the commissioners, and she will do that tomorrow. But it's next Wednesday at 6 o'clock from 6 to 7:30, a moderated panel discussion. With Delegate Treppinger, Judge Bloomquist from Circuit Court of Baltimore City. Betsy's going to be there, and Brianna Rock, Violence Prevention Supervisor at the University of Maryland Medical Center. And it's moderated by Deborah Leaner of Channel 11. So it's clearly something that the judiciary has thought carefully about. And I just wanted to make sure we were aware of this kind of thing. In this regard, this might be a good point for me to mention that, and I'll let Suki elaborate, but regarding the mental health initiative by the state judiciary. So if you wanted to say a word about that, you can contact the adult, maybe Judge Weathersby is probably. Are you aware of this, Judge Weathersby?
Say?
It's I think I mentioned in an earlier meeting that I got a call from Chief Judge Fader, who was checking in with me as the chair of the commission to make sure that an initiative that the state judiciary was pursuing regarding mental health interventions were not duplicative of any work that we were doing in the juvenile space. And I thought that you certainly had been in touch with Judge Sabat. I'm probably going to mispronounce her name.
That's correct.
Close enough. I'm here.
Judge Sabat from Montgomery County.
She's on virtual.
I'm on Zoom.
Oh, Judge,
Hello, how are you?
I apologize. I'm looking right at you, of course.
That's all right. Thank you so much.
But you knew you would be joining us.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to be here and I appreciate it.
So Judge Sabat is spearheading, and Judge, as I understand it from Judge Fader, Justice Fader, you no longer have a docket.
Yeah.
Okay?
Well, actually, I was sitting on one today, but that's I did sit in one today. I'm still in mental health court and I still do some of my VOPs, but I've been pretty much taken off the line over the last 2 years to work on this initiative.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. As I said to Justice Fader, Chief Justice Fader, this is such an indication of the magnitude of the commitment that the judiciary is making to this work with regard to really providing services and potential interventions and potential pathways for those who are legally involved, but who are also burdened by mental health and behavioral health issues. And I just, again, I can't say enough about how gracious the judiciary is to take the lead and to give you the leadership. And I hope that you get all the resources you need. And I'm confident that if Chief Justice Fader has anything to do with it, you will be provided with as many resources as possible. And I'm so delighted to have you joining us. And as I sort of put Suki on the spot a few minutes ago, she will be our liaison to your work. And there won't be any duplication of effort, but hopefully there will be some cross-fertilization of ideas and some insights that we can gain from the work that you are doing at the adult level, bring it to our work at the juvenile level, and hopefully, if we all live long enough, and I hope that doesn't take too long, the whole idea of emerging adults, that cohort of 18 to 25-year-olds that we really, really, really need to start paying a lot of attention to. And I think that this is an opportunity, this commission and the work that the judiciary under your leadership and Chief Justice Fager's leadership is going forward with, will provide us in Maryland with a real opportunity to catch up with some other states such as Massachusetts in the area of emerging adult interventions. So thank you, Judge, and welcome.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Oh, it's tomorrow.
The what?
The kickoff is
Oh,
tomorrow.
the kickoff is tomorrow. Yes. So that'll be our first full meeting. We've met with some of our proposed work group chairs and vice chairs, and we're super excited. So we have all 32 members attending. So we'll see how it rolls. And I believe Suki is going to be at that meeting as well, at least virtually. And we look forward to it. And I have to agree very much that 18 to 25 transitional AIDS youth is such a critical period. And it's interesting, Judge Leifman, we were fortunate enough to work with us in Florida on a grant that we were able to receive through SJI, has always said that if he had to do it all over again, and he dealt with the adults initially, he would start with the juveniles, because maybe he could have saved an entire generation from where he was, because he started about 25 years ago. So the work of this committee is so important and so critical, and very happy to listen and to learn. So thank you.
Well said. Thank you so much. And again, welcome. We look forward to a long association with your work. So again, you'll get a copy of this flyer tomorrow. And it's a Zoom meeting. You can register if you want to drop in, see what they're talking about in Baltimore City. And I'm happy to share that with the commission. Okay. How about Youth Rehabilitation Services Work Group?
So I'm here, from Youth Rehabilitative Services Work Group. Aaron Bessinger is my co-chair, but he's unable to be here. So last month in September, we met with local management boards as we continue to try and understand who out there is part of the system of offering prevention services to youth in this state. And so we met with Suki did a great job of finding us local management boards of different sizes. So from Anne Arundel County, which has up to 40 employees, to Allegheny County, which is a staff of 1. So that we heard how different local management boards address the needs in their communities, what different jurisdictions are able to do around juvenile justice, and how they are looking forward to the governor's office's idea of looking at juvenile justice as one of the issues for governor's office of children beyond the Enough Act. And then we're planning our next meeting will be with credible messengers. And so we've invited stakeholders who offer that program to come talk to us about what do the credible messenger programs look like, how are they working with young people in the communities, and again, to understand how do we keep kids from ever entering juvenile services or from not going back. So even if they've had some contact, how do we keep them from going back? And still trying to understand, I think, like all the work groups, what is the existence of what's going on in Maryland so that we know where the gaps are, and understand how we can better support this.
Any questions for Liz? Thank you, Liz. Okay. Prevention.
And I see Aubrey on the screen. Hi, Aubrey. Be safe. I see a seatbelt, so I know you're in the car. All right. So the prevention work group, actually just on Monday, we had a great presentations regarding housing instability for our youth and then how that interplays into juvenile justice involvement, especially for unaccompanied youth experiencing homelessness. The most common source of their housing instability is family conflict. It causes them to either leave home on their own or ask to leave by their parents. And then they end up engaging in survival crimes in order to either find housing or feed themselves or sustain themselves without any kind of adult supervision and support. And so there was a lot to unpack and dig through there. I think there's definitely a lot of opportunities to look at for prevention services within that. So it was a really great presentation and a lot of information just in 45 minutes. And so it's a lot to get through, but it was very powerful. And Aubrey, I don't know if you can come off mute to add, but
no, I think it was all just so powerful. We're looking at whether or not we need to expand our meeting times a little bit more so we can have some more time to like do some processing together. But we're going to be doing that by writing for now. And I think also I just would say it also brought up for us, like as we're thinking about housing in particular, but all of the issues, just as we're hearing some narratives around whether or not there's a small group of young people who are really causing a lot of the crime that's being popularized in our media. For us to also think about the fact that there are a lot of needs that oftentimes are underlying these crimes, right? These survival crimes, these different kind of just hardships that young people are viewing, and needing to make sure that we make space to bring that to the surface as well as we're talking about our prevention efforts.
Thank you. Would you pass the microphone to Secretary Valentino, who sneaked in here when I wasn't looking? Welcome, Commissioner Valentino. And as I promised, every meeting at the top, out of respect for your time and commitments, I want to give you an opportunity. I do want to remind everyone that what we anticipate for the December meeting, which will be virtual only, we expect to spend a lot more time with Secretary Valentino to give her an opportunity to give her end of the year. I'm not going to call it a speech. It won't be a speech. It won't be a speech.
Update.
Update to the commission.
State of the DJS, I guess. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm sorry, I was running a little behind. Traffic was not kind on my way down, so, and we were sort of pushing it anyway. So, apologize for being late. I'm just gonna not give too many updates today, just get to work and, participate in the agenda that we have here. I know we have a lot to get to, but we'll say, I just want to point out to all the commissioners, as well as all of us on the live stream, is that there are a ton of resources that Governor Moore has put together to support our federal workers during the shutdown. And so if you Google Governor Moore federal shutdown, you will see all the list of things, from getting support for paying bills, temporary loans, access to employment resources and unemployment, access to support if you're having challenges with your mortgage. And there's a lot of also great laws and framework to support people during this time that are in place. So I just encourage you to look at those resources. And as we all will touch people who are impacted during this time, that we remember that there are a lot of connections out there for them. So just wanted to put that out there. And I'm happy to ask any questions. I didn't prepare any updates because I'm saving them all for December. It's going to be amazing.
Any questions for Secretary? Anything? Anybody remotely want to address the Secretary?
Mr. Chair, not to ask the Secretary, but to also put on the plate, I think we've gotten, and I'm trying to figure out how to get a flyer here to be shared with everyone. I'll send it to Suki. But the Secretary has agreed graciously to do a town hall meeting with us in District 10 on November the 4th. So I'll share that with Suki, and all are invited. That's November the 4th at Owings Mills High School in Owings Mills, Maryland, District 10. So thank you, Madam Secretary.
I'm really looking forward to this event that I think is going to be incredibly comprehensive. We're going to bring some programs in to be available to talk to the community. We're going to bring some resources for community, also share all the opportunities we have to work at the Department of Juvenile Services. So that's another thing I think, we could do better at sort of communicating with you all the things happening at DHS. So you could be out there in your community sharing the information, because we have a lot of jobs. We need people to come work in our facilities. We need the people to come work in our community offices. And we're really looking to expand our reach and making sure that we are looking far and wide for all the people who want to come and make a difference in our young people's lives.
By the way, what is the status of the hiring freeze?
So for the hiring freeze, it's there, but for many of the positions at the department that directly serve young people, they are exempt from the hiring freeze. So all our frontline workers in our facilities, all our frontline workers in community are all exempt from this. So we're able to still hire. And also I will say the administration has been very supportive during this time for even when we have vacancies to help us repurpose those vacancies to places where we have a great need, such as our residential facilities, to ensure that we are sort of directing our resources where our young people.
That's good to know. Anything further for the secretary or for the good of the order? So do you need a minute or two to address the commissioners about anything at this point? Okay. All right. Anybody have any more general questions or concerns for me or Suki or fellow commissioner?
Maria Navarro has her hand up.
I'm sorry.
Maria has her hand up.
Oh, okay.
Virtually.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I just wanted to know, I know we have the discussion portion. I didn't know if we were at the discussion portion because I wanted to do a quick update from the superintendents on some interest as it relates to this committee's work, and I just didn't know when I can do that.
I'm afraid I did not hear all of that.
She was asking, is this good for discussion time?
Yes, this is discussion time.
Okay, so again, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Maria Navarro. I am the superintendent of Charles County Public Schools, but I am sitting on behalf of the Superintendents Association, PZAM. And last time, I believe it was my first meeting, so I heard some conversation about some different interest in the education sector as it relates to juveniles in the juvenile justice process. We, the superintendents, have been meeting and queuing up our interest this year as we also start preparing for legislative season. And I wanted to just let you know that one of the interests and one of our top priorities as superintendents is to improve the information sharing that we have regarding juveniles that commit certain crimes, and the information that school systems receive regarding those juveniles that may not be in our districts or may be moving from district to district, so that we can appropriately support their education settings while they are going through the process of possible charges and going through the court system. So I just wanted to give you guys a heads up because I heard a little bit about that pop up at the last meeting, and we hadn't had our meeting yet. But that is one of the priorities, and I'm happy to come back and share more information if people are interested. But we're seeking, again, more information sharing that could eventually also mean a legislative solution.
That would be excellent, Dr. Navarro. Thank you so much. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you think the work product might be as a result of these efforts on the part of the association?
So one of the interests for us is to have sort of a central repository that could be the Maryland State Department of Education. It could be somewhere else where that information sharing is given to, again, a central repository, and that body can act to inform the superintendents across the school system at that level of any specific arrest that would be deemed to be highlighted for information about making appropriate education opportunities for students once we know that information. There was a couple of cases last year with some of our jurisdictions where there was the superintendents were not aware of certain students in their jurisdictions that had certain arrests, and that caused some problems for then figuring out what would be the right educational placement that we're required to do for those students. So that's sort of what we want to have some more conversations and put together information on. I can provide to Suki some testimony that my organization did last year regarding a bill that was on the table around this communication piece. And if we can share that with everybody else, I'll give you a little bit more detail about our interest.
That's excellent. Thank you so much. I know that many of us in this room and on the call recall one or two of those instances to which you allude. I'm just curious, Madam Secretary, are you plugged into that process yet? And do you even have a legal pathway to get plugged into that process with the association?
So we have a statutory framework for schools to learn about certain reportable offenses. So it's a list of offenses where schools are notified. They're generally notified through law enforcement or the state's attorney's office, and then they're notified of disposition. And that framework, I think, is intended to balance in providing education institutions with information and protecting the young person's confidentiality and trying to reduce the stigma that may carry into other settings when others know about their records. I think that there's safeguards put in place through the process we have now to ensure those records stay confidential. But every statutory framework, I'm sure, can use potential improvements. And so we are happy to continue the conversation to see how we can help improve that process, ensure that, with that appropriate balance, that we are communicating in a way that protects our young people, but also informs the school in the right way.
Terrific. Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions or comments in that regard? Chief?
I think I have one. This works now. Oh, this will be a challenge. I'll just use my outside. That'd be a challenge to get that to work. Is it loud enough for everybody? Probably too loud. So we had, as you know, we represent the chiefs and the sheriffs. We had in the past, let's say 14 months or so, 2 reports from law enforcement officials in different jurisdictions in the state, where one, a person that had been convicted of a homicide in another outside of Maryland jurisdiction was in a school, they didn't know it, and committed another homicide. And then another school district had a student that was pending a trial, I think, on a violent assault with a handgun. It was in a Maryland jurisdiction school, and then killed another juvenile. And they had no idea, both times they had no idea the child that was in the school was pending or been convicted of an actual homicide. But law enforcement, we had no idea those kids were in the schools from what they relayed to me. So I think matching up, there's a gap there that needs to be fixed by the state legislature. I get a sideways glance from somebody, but because we would have no idea, and that way there's no way we could let the superintendent know. For instance, in Prince George's County, we just wouldn't be able to do it unless somehow we stumbled on it. But I don't think we want to stumble. I think we want it to be on foot.
Yes, I have something to say on this issue. So we have to be careful, and I say this, Dr. Navarro, since you are going to be meeting with the superintendents. This is something that has come before the legislature every year over probably the past 7 years that I've been there. We have to be careful because if you think about it, when it comes to teachers, principals, school workers, they could have a charge pending, but it is a personnel issue. And so therefore the parents may not know that there is a charge pending against someone that they've entrusted their children to. So we must balance that against a child's right to any level of confidentiality because a charge is pending. So I mentioned that to you. If you could have that type of discussion with the superintendents, I would appreciate it, so that we also are balancing the child's any rights that they have to any level of confidentiality as along, to the same vein that we look at adults' rights, because of personnel, we call it personnel reasons. There's got to be some protection for children as well.
Thank you. Yes.
I turned my mic off just in case. I just want to point out, there was a fantastic, sort of not a law review article, but out of the University of Maryland, and in January 2025, that sort of goes through the frequently asked questions about our current sort of reportable offense framework. I think it's really good. It sort of tells us the state of where we are right now. And I would just ask that as that is sort of added as a resource to the commission members to sort of just get a good overview, because there's a lot of ins and outs. Like, I'll say something I know I'll probably get a little bit wrong if I don't sort of review the article again, but there's lots of different responsibilities on sort of all the stakeholders and timeframes. And so just to sort of get a current lay of the land, I think it's a really good resource.
We'll circulate it
Yeah.
to the commissioners. Thank you for,
Yeah, the only I would say add to that is that the law enforcement does notify the schools on certain enumerated crimes, but it is prior to them being adjudicated. So that already is out there. We've already made them aware prior to them being convicted or found responsible for what they did. So it's prior to any court hearings or anything else. It's at the time of arrest for
But I wouldn't know if some kid at Laurel High School was arrested in Montgomery County.
I think cross jurisdictions are the absolute issue. Because law enforcement will do it to the schools that they know. If they don't know where the child.
Right.
Sorry.
It's only if they know actually where those kids are going to school. So like, if you don't know if they're in private school or they live in another jurisdiction, they may not know to be able to identify. So I think that that's part of the issue that goes on, but law enforcement is supposed to do it within 24 hours of the actual arrest. And then the state attorney's office does it after the position is completed. We don't have a time frame for the state attorney's office, so there's a lot of paperwork that goes along with it. So once that's completed, but I think part of the issue is knowing where that kid is actually going to school and if that child is in school. Because if they're not in school, there's nowhere to send it.
Or if they change schools.
Or they change schools, correct.
Talk to each other.
And I think when you look at that side of the county, of the state, and probably the northern side of the state, but I'll speak from experience in Montgomery and Prince George's. Your District of Columbia, Virginia, right there, we would have no way because they're not going to let us know. And we can't check every child in the school system, in their records, even yearly, to notify the school. So that I think it's the Secretary was saying I think it needs to be short also.
That raises an interesting question, or at least it's a little bit interesting to me. To what extent, I'm going to focus on Prince George's and Montgomery, since you two are right here available to me. To what extent, if at all, do either prosecutors and or law enforcement cross jurisdictional lines have a dialogue about that kind of issue? I know that this was mentioned briefly when we had the panel, Carlotta, but I think this conversation kind of brings that up to the surface.
I don't know with respect to law enforcement. I mean, I do know that if our police officers in Montgomery County are aware of jurisdictions where they're living, there will be communication, and we try to communicate back and forth. With respect to the state's attorney's office, we have a group that for each one of my counterparts, we communicate via email. We have other ways that we communicate if we have kids that are in comment, if we're seeing things, if we are getting cases from a child moves from Baltimore County to Montgomery County, then we'll reach out and they will communicate with us with respect to that. So we do try. Is it in every case? No.
What about DC?
DC, I have connections in DC too that we've done MOUs with to be able to try to communicate, and they know to reach out to us and we reach out to them. DC is a little bit more difficult, and I will just say because they have, I'm going to get this wrong, and the secretary may be able to say it better than I can, because DYRS, their juvenile division, is separate also from their family treatment court. So if you're on probation, I think you're to the family treatment court. If you're committed, you're to DYRS. So they don't communicate either. So it's really kind of knowing where that child is in that particular circumstance.
Probation's under a federal agency. It's like under the federal
There's
superior court.
Yeah, so there's
Probation is
two,
under-
in getting documents, and I know that just for my thing is having to go to the right, knowing where they are. So, but I communicate with the Attorney General's office down there and the U.S. Attorney.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
And in our confidentiality statement or statute 3A27, there is an exception to have information sharing with the District of Columbia, Virginia, and I want to say Delaware, some of our states that sort of touch Maryland, but there has to be a reciprocal agreement, right? So we can't share with them unless they're willing to share with us. And at one point in DC, years ago, we had a computer system that like talked with each other. And that system is no longer operational, which is like an old system. And so we're trying to re-engage with some of those conversations, especially for our Prince George's County law enforcement to be able to help them understand when a young person may reside in DC or have priors to DC so that they are making the best decisions they can, as well as DJS when we receive that young person.
If I do, I also think DJS is limited in the ability to obtain the records that they need to obtain from Washington DC. And I will just say through the interstate for compact, with juvenile for interstate compact. Thank you. And for the interstate compact, because if they're under supervision, there's an inability for DJS to communicate with them without going through the ICJ. Correct? Am I wrong?
We have to go through the ICJ. If they're interstate compact for juveniles, I think is the sort of the formal federal impact, but we have to communicate through that compact.
Yes, someone on the Zoom. Maria?
Sorry, I was on mute. So I just wanted to emphasize that from the educator perspective, what we are experiencing is just definitely a need to support and be part of and want to be included in how to coordinate systems of communication and information sharing that really allows us to make better informed decisions. And we're not, student confidentiality is an extremely important thing for superintendents. So we're also looking at options that inform the highest educator in every school system, and that's the superintendents, not school level people, not principals, not central office, but the superintendents. And I have a very good working relationship with my sheriff, my district attorney's office. And so I think that's what we're trying to work through. And I appreciate it. I'm learning so much and want my colleagues to understand the complexity of this information sharing while we make appropriate decisions and support our first goal, which is to continue to educate students, but with information that allows us to make the best possible options of what that looks like at certain points in time for everybody involved, the safety of everybody involved. So I just appreciate the conversation. I wanted to put it out there because honestly, it is one of the reasons why we, the superintendents, asked and wanted to be part of this group, as we also can help support other areas of the juvenile justice reform. So thank you.
Thank you so much. We are so lucky to have you with us. You were a long time coming through no fault of your own. We've been waiting for you, and we're glad that you finally arrived. Final words?
Yeah.
No,
I just have a quick question on the part about not knowing where the child goes to school. I see if the child might not be in school. But isn't that usually an exception? And I guess I'm asking law enforcement because what happens is at the time of a child is taken into custody, the parent or guardian is notified. So can you all ask the parent or guardian where this child is in school or at least supposed to be in school? And that is throughout the state, as well as any state that that child goes to school.
Yeah, we ask the parents and we hope that they're honest with us as well as the local school system. We will inquire with them to make sure he's in there. But if we have somebody commuting going to the beach or going somewhere else or across county lines, we border Delaware. So it is an issue. So it could be an issue. 9 times out of 10, we're taking their word for it. If we don't have direct contact, we do have SROs in all our schools, so we are able to get that information.
But do you think that's probably the exception more than the rule?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I do think it's more the exception than the
Okay, thank you.
All right, we'll take a 5-minute break, stretch our legs, and then we'll come back to the processes and systems coordination work group to do their presentation and have a discussion and a vote on their recommendation. Let's take a 5-minute break. I'd like to call us back to order. So, we are pleased before we hand things over to the processes and system coordination work group. Let me extend a warm all commissioner welcome to our newest member, attending her first meeting remotely. I think she's still there. We'll know in a second. Danielle Wallace, Gabrielle. I blew it. Ms. Wallace, welcome to the commission. We're so pleased that you've been able to join us today. We look forward to meeting you in person, and we wish you the best in your studies. I understand you are a student at Towson State University. She left. I scared her away. Scared her away. We'll welcome you soon enough. Okay. Well, I'm pleased to turn it over to Susan Leviton and Alicia for their presentation and for what I'm sure will be a vigorous discussion.
Oh, yes, please. I talk loud. Can you hear me? I'm technologically limited.
There you go.
Okay. First of all, I want to thank everybody in this room and in the commission. I have met so many wonderful people and from all different walks of life, and really, I'm not one of them that doesn't care about kids. And so I think that, you know, we have more in common than things we disagree about, and hopefully we can have a lively discussion and really talk about matters that really matter to our state and to the kids in our state and the public, and how can we create a better system that ensures that the public safety is taken into account and that kids get the best services possible. And so I'm so glad to be reporting. Now, I'm going to be very brief. You have the report. We're not going line by the report. And of course, you have many opportunities to ask questions. I'm going to give a brief introductory. Teens are different from adults, and yet for so many Maryland teens who are arrested, the first thing that happens after their arrest is that they're booked and detained in an adult jail. These Maryland teens, our Maryland teens, stay longer in adult jails and are less protected from adult criminals housed there than teens in any other state in the country. The United States Department of Justice has reported that Maryland is the worst state in the country in length of time we detain children in adult facilities, and in the ways we expose them to adults in those facilities without sight and sound barriers. And so the question is, why has this happened? And it's because of Maryland's auto charging laws. Maryland's practice of automatically charging teens as adults is what drives young people into adult jails after arrest. If Maryland moves to a system in which children are not automatically charged as adults, but rather begin in the juvenile court with judicial discretion to waive youth into adult court in cases where warranted, we would drastically reduce the number of children in adult detention. This is true since 85% of the kids automatically sent to adult justice system have their cases dismissed or sent back to the juvenile system. So I just want you to think about this. Imagine if you were like getting a medical procedure and this medical procedure said that 85% of, this procedure is supposed to produce a certain result. But in 85% of those cases, it didn't produce that result. That drug would be taken off the market. And yet Maryland has a situation where we automatically charge kids, even though 85% of those kids don't end up in the adult system, and we continue to do it. Now, and so if we continue with our present system, what we basically have is a system where kids spend an average of 125 days in adult detention waiting for their transfer here. And that's an average of 98 days longer than if the cases have been started in juvenile court. So some people will say, well, the problem is that you just don't have enough juvenile detention beds. And what you really need to do is build more juvenile detention. But this is a situation where we can't build our way out. Let's talk about this realistic. The capacity of any program is determined by two things: how many kids you admit and the length of stay. Clearly in Maryland, too many young people begin their cases in adult court to wait for a process that ultimately will dismiss the charge entirely or waive the youth back to juvenile court in more than 85% of the cases. Now, if that's what we're doing, that is the largest. We are admitting so many more people than needed. So, you couldn't build enough beds to take care of all. In addition, because the cases start in adult court, the kids spend an average of 98 days longer in custody awaiting their transfer here than a kid if they were charged as a juvenile. And the reason is because the adult system doesn't have time limits. So whereas in juvenile court, if a kid is detained, you have the hearing within 30 days. In the adult system, the only limit is 180 days for a speedy trial. So these kids spend all this time for no reason other than they were charged as an adult. So as long as we put too many kids in the beginning, and then we keep them there for so much longer, we're always going to have this problem. We can't build our way out. In addition, this system is so costly. We spend $1,174 each day for a kid, the detention bed. And because they spend 98 days longer than if they were started off as being charged as a juvenile, we spend approximately $147,000 per kid. There is no data anyway that keeping kids locked up in detention is effective in meeting their needs or decreasing their chances of reoffending. In fact, the data is the exact opposite. Kids who are put in the adult system have a far greater chance of reoffending. So not only is it costly, it isn't protecting the public safety. And the saddest thing is that what we are really doing is we're taking away resources from where we really need to spend them. had spent a lot of time talking to Sheriff Davis. And he comes from a very small town. And one of the days that we were talking about, I said to him, well, how many families do you really have that are so difficult, so complicated, are involved in so many systems? And he said, probably around 20. And I said, and if you had $148,000 for each one of those kids, how many of those families do you think you could help so that they wouldn't have to be involved in juvenile justice? And he said, probably around 15. 15 out of 20. That's amazing. And he's right. Because, you know, I was listening the other day and it was an article and it was talking about, you know, one of the really big problems is kids with guns and going into school or threatening other kids. And this is a problem mainly not so much in the city as it is in the rural areas. And so there's this provision that says, and I think it was Homeland Security that says, you have to come up with a plan. You got to really figure out what are you going to do about these kids. And so I think it was in a community like outside of Syracuse. It wasn't, you know, and this kid was being bullied terrible on the bus. And he was telling everybody he's going to kill him. You know, he's going to kill this kid and he's going to kill that kid. And so this group of all the local people who work with all these kids got together and they said, okay, let's see what we can do as a group. First thing they did is they went to the kid's grandmother's house because the kid doesn't live at home. And they locked up all the guns in the house so that the kid could not have access to any guns. They didn't take away the guns, they locked them up. Second thing is they said to the kid, we know you're being bullied. We need time to investigate it. Would you be willing to do homeschooling? We will get you a tutor. You will, and we'll get you mental health services. Kids say, great, I don't have to go to school and be tortured. I'd love that. So they got him a tutor, his reading improved, his math improved, they got him mental health services. And then they went to the school and they dealt with the bullying issue. They said, this isn't going to happen anymore. You're not going to be allowed to do it. And then eventually the kid went back to school. And it was the person from the sheriff's office who went to that school at the time and was his contact person. And they developed this wonderful relationship. And, you know, eventually the kid, he wasn't arrested. No guns were taken away. Nobody went to jail. No one was killed. This is what we can do if we have $148,000 for really troubled kids. We can build programs for them. We can make a difference. And we don't. We just move kids around as if they're pawns on a chessboard. They go from adult detention to juvenile detention. They spend a year. They lose what's going on in school. And all these wonderful programs that the Rehabilitation Committee is looking into, we can't afford them. We close most of the programs in our state because we can't afford it. All the things that we know that will work, that will make a difference for kids, we've shut down because we can't afford it. And we continue to spend money, outrageous amounts of money, in putting kids in adult prison only to return them to the juvenile court or dismiss the case. And in the worst cases, some of those kids who are so terrified by being in the adult jail, They plead to time served and they're released. They get no services. They go back into the community, furious at what happened to them, angry at the world, and I guarantee you, they are much more likely to reoffend than if you would have taken that money and really provided the services those kids need. For that reason, our committee firmly believes we've got to stop doing what we're doing. It doesn't make sense. It's not working. Now I will hand it over to my colleagues.
Thank you, Susan.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for being here, of course, and for reading the report. We trust that you've read the report carefully. You've had it for about a week now, and the work group is very proud of it. We've worked diligently on it. We decided that Susan would give an overview for obvious reasons, because she could do so far more powerfully than I could, but I'll back clean up and just make a couple of quick points before we open this up for questions. We think we're prepared to answer your questions. The first point that I'd like to make is our ultimate recommendation does not ban auto charging, does not bar auto charging. We want to make that perfectly clear. Our recommendation is that every child begin in the juvenile court system with judicial discretion, with the ability for certain cases to be charged and tried in the adult criminal system if the judge wants it. So again, we just wanted to make sure that that was crystal clear. The second point that I wanted to make is that we were very diligent in the drafting of this report to make sure that it was based in facts and based in data, and it is. And it's data not from one source, but from multiple sources, as you'll see. From the Vera Institute, the Sentencing Project, the Governor's Office of Crime Prevention and Policy, the Office of the Public Defender, and the Department of Juvenile Services. And on some of the most compelling data points, there's absolute consistency. And I know you see that in reading the report. So I'll just very briefly ask if any of the other members of our work group would like to make any opening remarks before we open it up to you and then vote.
So I will say that I voted against this for obvious reasons. There was no data from law enforcement. There was no data from state's attorney's offices. Maryland's problem is they do things differently in each county. So as far as Caroline goes, most of the cases that we have that are adult, we have one right now for attempted homicide. If they are held sight sound separate in a detention facility, they do get due process. Again, these are violent crimes. So I think that the 9 times out of 10, the crimes that are dismissed are usually sexual assault, usually rape cases, things like that. Violent crimes usually are seen, as far as Caroline County goes, we see them out to the end of the problem. So the reason that I voted against this is because I don't believe that the data is there from law enforcement, from the courts. I also asked about courts. We got no data from the courts, and I think they are the best ones to provide the data. Would be the courts, law enforcement, corrections, for that matter, and other organizations. But quite frankly, and no disrespect, the data from juvenile services under Schiraldi was all over the place. So,
any other member of the work group want to speak?
I'll also say a couple of things. The first is that I'm glad that this was the first one of these recommendations that's coming up before the commission, because I think this is it's not surprising that it comes up first each time, because I think we want to have a juvenile justice system. We want to have a system of justice that represents the best of who we are in this state in Maryland. And I think this particular issue is one where we just fall so far short of it. I think this recommendation is consistent with the recommendation that comes up anytime there's a statewide commission where people look at research, best practice, and the data in Maryland. They always come to this conclusion. And the reason is because this conclusion allows for every child who is currently eligible to be charged as an adult to be charged as an adult tomorrow. It doesn't change that at all.
So it gives that process. We already have an existing process in Maryland that allows that to happen. We have a waiver process that allows it to happen. So it doesn't change anything like that. This presumes for children that they are children, starts that as a young person, with the exception being when we think that they need to be charged as an adult instead. Right now, we group a whole bunch of kids purely for what they are charged, and we say they're an adult. And then we have to prove that they're not, which just seems wildly backwards. And I think for myself, who has worked in the juvenile justice system, worked around juvenile justice around the entire country, I think one of the essential aspects of what juvenile justice does when it's at its best is it's individualized. It's starting from a perspective that every kid will have a different set of responses that will be most effective for him. We might not know, we might get it wrong, but we're going to think about that. Every young person is different. That whether in the juvenile justice system or in considering whether or not to waive a kid, that offense alone does not tell you everything you want to know about the young person. In fact, sometimes it tells you some of the least things that you want to know about the young person, whether they're going to be able to be served in the community or whether they need some sort of setting. I think the other thing is that this process, and I think this is one of the, in going through this research that was done so well, I think one of the things that's most troubling, and I will totally agree that we need more data. And I'll say it over and over, I'm a data person. I was a research director in Washington, D.C.'s agency before I came to work at the Amy Casey Foundation. When we say we need more data, we also need everyone to put their data on the table. We can't say we don't have data and then not share it. And I think that is a major problem that we have right now. And I think it's something that this commission, I hope that we can work together to bring the most data to the table. But one of the most troubling things I think that happened is the prospect of so many young people starting in the criminal justice system, being placed in jail and either moving to juvenile detention or not, but even if they move to juvenile detention and having that be the only thing that happens to them. So as was described, they end up pleading to time served in criminal court and then get nothing. And so we literally give a 16-year-old the very, very worst thing that our justice system has to offer. Jail, where there's nothing. Where juvenile detention, where there's nothing. It's not intended to be a place with services. It's not intended to be a place that's helping kids with their emotional challenges, with their mental health challenges. It's not intended to be a place where there's pro-social activities, where there's positive mentors. It's not intended for any of those things. It's not intended to be a place where the kid experiences sunlight, where they go outside and they experience the thing. I mean, so all of that is just a backdrop, I think, of why we can do this. And I think the biggest thing to me is just simply this always has seemed like a very gradual shift that is treated like a massive, in the sense that we don't change eligibility, but we charge adults. And that's not even on the table. Could be on the table, but it's not anything that's part of this. The last thing I just want to say is about, and I know I'm saying a lot, but I wanted to say one more thing, because I do think that it's a good question to ask, like, why not just build more states? Like, and the question of, like, can you build your way out of it? I think that, again, I think Susan said it really well. It's like understanding just population management is just a basic math situation of the number of people coming into a facility and how fast that they leave. How fast they leave is, and this wide swath of kids who are being roped into being charged adults is having the impact. It's having a huge impact on our beds. The length of stay is the issue. That's what's creating how long that, like, why it is we have this situation where there's not enough beds. And I mean, we've done studies just on the juvenile justice side that show that each extra day a kid spends in detention increases the likelihood that they're going to be arrested for felony offense. It decreases the likelihood that they'll ever go to school again. Decreases the likelihood they'll graduate, increases the likelihood that they'll have adult charges. So detention itself is harmful. It's a harmful space. And so the idea that we can just build more of it
so that we can keep keeping kids as long doesn't make sense.
Thank you. Anybody else on the task? The work group?
Can I just say one thing about the,
One quick thing, Susan, go ahead.
okay. In May, we made a formal request to the courts for, because the courts would really, we think, be able to give us the best information. The courts say that because of, confidentiality, they can't give us this information. We're not asking for individual kids. All we're asking for is, if you're, trying the adult court, what are the steps, what happens? How many kids, just broad general things. I mean, what we do know is that the Vera Institute in 2020 asked for the very same things, and they didn't give it to them then. So how long do you want to wait and do nothing and keep a system that is absolutely the worst possible thing for the kid, the state, and the public safety, while you wait for this court? Maybe we should go to the legislature and say, write a law that says, but the court has never done it. It was asked for 5 years ago. It didn't come. So I am not going to sit here and not do anything because we're waiting for a court. The broad general numbers consistently have been the exact same thing over the years.
Okay, I want to open it up, and I'd like to start of your indulgence first by inviting anyone who has a question, just a question for any member of the work group. I'd like to start there. Because we've all read the brief, we all know what data is included, and we have the one voice among the work group who says that he wants additional data as the reason he voted against it. So, question, yes.
So this issue with the courts not supplying
I'm
data.
sorry, can you pass the mic?
Hard to believe they couldn't hear me in Annapolis. This issue with the court not supplying data. Have we FOIA'd or MPIA'd it? Because I get those all day, every day. And you get your answer quickly. If you get body worn camera from me, like that. All you gotta do is file a FOIA. We FOIA or MPIA. Because they supply it.
Judge, go ahead. Judge, would you like to answer that?
No,
Please
please,
do.
you go ahead, go ahead.
No,
That's a question for Mary Sullivan. As far as I know, we've been having internal conversations, but I don't know that we've done.
I think we have to do that. I think, listening, and I'm just asking as a question on this because I'm shocked they have turned over the information. I imagine that is probably an administrative glitch somewhere in that process where somebody's looking at it going, oh, no, we can't do this. Because I have to do it. And we do it every day. And I don't want to hear from people the cost and the expense to it because that's a good part. I pay a good part of that. And rightfully so. People deserve the data. The courts should have to supply this data. If they don't, then it's in my measure, it's a very simple matter of getting them with
There are significant differences, very significant differences under the Maryland Public Information Act when it comes to the judiciary. And there have actually been a few cases in recent years that have gone up to the Maryland Supreme Court because the judiciary has taken the position in some cases, understandably so, that they are not like just another executive branch agency. And the court, of course, has to decide for itself what it's subject to under the law.
Judge, I think that you're asking, what I heard you say is you're asking for blind data. You're asking for data, any identifiers. whatsoever. I really have trouble believing that could be processed. And frankly, then, and I'm not the attorney for this commission, but then I think you go to Greenville or Baltimore and go that out.
So. Thank you, and I appreciate, I very much appreciate the suggestion. I think there may be barriers that we're not recognizing, but I want to respond to it in a slightly different way, which is, if we received that data from the judiciary, what it would shed light on is what happens to those 15% of kids who are retained in the adult system and whose cases are not dismissed. We don't need additional data from the judiciary to tell us that in 85% of the cases that are auto-charged, in 85% of those cases, they do not end in an adult criminal conviction. Either they are transferred back to the juvenile system, or the state is unable to prove the case.
Well, that was going to actually be my follow-up question to the chief's question. Sheriff Baker says he wants data from law enforcement, data from the courts. Is there any reason whatsoever to think that if and when that data arrives on our doorstep, it will show anything different than Vera's data, DJS's data, the public defender's data? What is there?
And GoCap's data.
And
So
GoCap.
it's multiple sources over years. I mean, and it's recent, right? It's 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. So it's multiple sources, recent data, consistent over
Half a
recent
decade.
history.
Half a decade. Any other questions for members of the board? Oh, yes.
I just wanted to talk about, or ask a question about, on from page 4, the enduring harm of adult detention of kids, and it talks about the impact on schools. Where are you more likely to get the educational resources they need, in a juvenile facility or in an adult facility?
I mean, so I can't speak as to what every adult facility provides as for education. I think it's very varied around the state, but I can tell you what you get at DJS. And it's year-round school, 6 hours a day, every day. You can earn a GED, a high school diploma. We do credit recovery. There's workforce development programs. And so that's what we provide. And I know, for example, at the youth detention center in Baltimore City, which is a youth facility that's run by the adult system, the Baltimore City Public School provides education there, but I can't tell you the cadence.
Well, I'm happy to speak a little bit about the courts data. The data that GoCap gets is cross-referenced between DJS, law enforcement, and DPSCS data. We are having internal conversations about the courts. The specific information that they're not willing to share with us is sex and race data. In the past, the Vera Institute was able to get that data, all of the data that we have requested. And in terms of juveniles, schools in adult facilities, there's no school in detention centers except for the YDC, which does have school from the Baltimore City Public Schools. And I'm happy to send an update on that data request with some more specific information after this meeting as well.
Ainsley, did you just say you were able to get the information from the courts?
So we were able to get some information from the courts. It's still going through the process of confirming it through all the departments. But there were specific items like transfer or hearing dates, things like that, date of arrest, and race, and I'm pretty sure sex that we haven't gotten. So they were able to get us some data, but not all of the data that the commission or GoCap requested. Aubrey, do you want to go?
Aubrey, please.
Thanks so much. So I just want to make sure I'm understanding, I guess, like two things. One, like, is there anything at all that's like restorative or rehabilitative, or that would justify continuing to allow so many youth for what seems to be like very poor outcomes in terms of successful prosecutions to remain in the adult system? Like, is there anything at all rehabilitative that's happening in that? Because rehabilitation is the purpose of the system.
Does any member of the work group want to tackle that question?
The question from Aubrey was, is there anything
You have a mic.
rehabilitative? I'm sorry. Is there anything rehabilitative or restorative about the adult system? Detention. We're talking about detention in the adult system. I think the silence is indicative of nobody on the work group knowing of anything rehabilitative or restorative about the adult.
And part of the problem is the sight and sound separation. So part of the problem with a juvenile in the adult system is the sight and sound separation. So they can't go to programs even if they exist, but adults are part of those programs. So there's a sight and sound issue if they're in an adult system. And then if they're in a juvenile facility, they can participate in some of those. But the adult system is not set up to house juveniles and to offer them services. It's set up for adults.
And perhaps one of you experts, I think we're all on the same page, but just to make sure, take a moment and then I'll get back to you, Mr. Secretary. Tell us exactly what sight and sound separation is, where the requirement comes from, and just say a word about it, just so we're all clear about what we're talking about.
Okay.
You've also got.
Oh, that's great. Do you want me to take a crack at it or no? I'll just say it comes from federal law, from the Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention Act. And sight and sound separation is what it sounds like. A complete sight and sound separation, so a child is not exposed to seeing an adult in a facility, nor should they be exposed to hearing adults. You know, we have information in the brief. We cite to Rachel Bay's extensive article about what it feels like for a child to not have that sight and sound separation, to be exposed either visually or simply hearing adults through the walls, yelling at them, pounding on the wall, making them feel hypervigilant and threatened. So that's my best crack at it, but I'm happy to have some help in answering that further from the secretary.
I just want to add, PREA, the Prison Rape Elimination Act, also requires sight and sound separation. So it's not just that Juvenile Delinquency Prevention Act, but also PREA. And PREA also is very clear that you cannot achieve sight and sound separation through solitary confinement. When sometimes you have one young person in a place, and so they're in the room by themselves, you can't achieve that sight and sound separation through a sort of their own space away from others.
Thank you. Mr. Secretary.
I just want to follow up. I thought I heard things they say, and I think you on the same page. I was trying to understand what the courts would share. If I'm not mistaken, I heard race and gender. That seems fundamental to better addressing some of the issues. I'm curious, were we told why the court wouldn't share that?
So that's it.
You're gonna have to turn it on.
So I'm digging through my emails right now, trying to find the exact information that they said that they couldn't provide. They initially said that they couldn't provide most of the data due to confidentiality reasons. We had a meeting with them about confidentiality to see if there was like some way that we could assure them that like OCAP goes through all of the appropriate confidentiality measures. And they came back that they were willing to share some additional information, but race and gender, they were still not able to share with us.
Okay. Now, oh, I'm sorry, Judge.
Can I?
Yeah, yes.
I wonder if there had been an invitation to a member of the AOC to the work group So I'm not sure. I think initially this was sent from like GoCap's data team to the courts, as part of GoCap. GoCap has a requirement, a legislative requirement to collect data on juveniles charged as adults. So it was going through that process rather than like a work group process, but I'm happy to bring it back to our data team and see if we can include more people in this conversation.
Well, there's GoCap and then there's the work group of commissioners. So I guess maybe my question wasn't to you, Ainsley. Maybe it was to the work group. And I think I am part of the work group, although I've only been to one because they're generally held at 10 a.m. and I'm in court. And I also, as I said, was on an extended medical leave, but I'm back. I will vote against this report because I don't think it is complete in terms of information. And in addition, I am not in a position as a judge to make legislative change recommendations through this commission. So I don't think I'm able to do that in any event. And I wanted to make just one additional correction. I believe that it was told that there are no time restrictions on kids awaiting transfer hearings who are detained, and that's not accurate. It's not just Hicks. There's a criminal procedure article 4202, yeah, that requires if a kid is detained that the transfer hearing has to be scheduled within 30 days. Now, many defense attorneys ask for postponements of that hearing, but there are some additional time constraints on it written into the law. I'm certainly not saying that our system is perfect, but there are a lot of issues. Like there are a lot of issues that go into this, and not simply the adult charging statute, I believe. And I don't think anybody has spoken on behalf of victims. There are victims.
Judge, I was trying to limit it to questions.
Oh.
But then, no,
Well, I just wanted to correct, I wanted to correct the.
You're the segue. So now we will open it up for people to express their views. I was trying to, that was the order in which I was trying to.
You're absolutely right, Judge.
That's okay. That's okay. Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
So you want to speak against the proposal?
Well, everyone can make their own decision. I'm not advocating here one way or the other. I'm trying to tell you that I don't believe that I was much of a part of the work group, unfortunately, and I don't think that our information is complete. And I wanted to correct the criminal procedure article. And I don't remember what my last point was trying to make. Okay. I do believe that nobody's spoken up for victims. These cases are not, respectfully, many of them are not a kid being bullied at school who makes a threat. There are armed carjackings, weapons violations, handgun violations, and there are victims. And there's always a balancing that has to come to play in public safety, victim safety, and the best interests of children as well.
Thanks, Judge.
So, Judge.
Other views?
Yeah, I still have a question.
Question. Go ahead.
Actually, I have a question, and that is, with respect to the, GoCap's dashboard on juveniles charged as an adult. For the time frame of, I'm just looking at July 1, 2024 to December 31, 2024. And I see that there were 491 charges filed. And I think that's probably what the group used because the 85% is here. And that it states that there were 59.5% were violent crimes. In looking at this, I think, I don't know how many people check this on a regular basis, but I think you might be surprised at the numbers of some of these charges. And I just wanted to make sure that everyone was aware of how to, so my question is everyone aware on how to get to GoCap's dashboard? So that you all, I mean, I know you are. I mean, just everyone, because it is very helpful for us to see the data ourselves and to analyze the data ourselves with kind of what Chief Baker, I think you're getting at. But the data is here, and this is reported from, law enforcement as well, because I look at it as for arrests and things of that sort. So it's a compilation, and if I understand, right? Okay, so those are my.
Okay, thanks. All right.
I was just hoping, well, I will defer to Commissioner Hamel, but I did want to respond briefly, if I could, to some of the very good points that Judge Weathersby made.
Go ahead, Jake.
Do you want to respond first, and then that's
Sure.
it's on your mind now, so.
Thank you. So regarding the time frames, I absolutely agree with what the judge raised and Commissioner Woodward agreed. I want to point out that it's the adult system overall is a lengthier system than the juvenile court system. So just to very briefly lay it out, when a child is charged as an adult, they're in the adult criminal system. They're arrested. There's a bail review the next court day, and then it's several weeks until a preliminary hearing. And then it's another several weeks until an initial appearance in circuit court. Then there's 30 days until mandatory motions must be filed. And there are all kinds of pretrial motions. A motion to transfer to juvenile court is just one of them. And then it's months until that is heard, and that's for various reasons. It could be for preparation, it could be because discovery has not been disclosed, all the evidence has been turned over from the state to the defense, which they need for these pretrial motions. And then it's more months until the trial. Juxtapose that to the juvenile court system. The child is arrested. Their emergency detention review is the next court day. And then it's 30 days, just 30 days until trial of that case if the child is detained. 60 days maximum. So it's the entire process. It's not just the transfer process, it's that the entire adult system is a lengthier, much lengthier system than the juvenile court system. And then in regards to public safety, the work group absolutely considered public safety. And we kept returning to this strong data point of 85%. Our recommendation is such that if all children are staying or begin in the juvenile court system, that will allow state's attorney's offices to focus on the most serious offenses, to focus on the children who are most concerned to law enforcement from a public safety perspective, and then have better outcomes. Persuade a judge to waive that child into the adult system, build a strong case. So we did consider public safety, and I wanted that to be clear as well. Thank you.
Go ahead, Jake.
Thank you. I realize I'm walking out on the thin end of the ice here when I ask this, but I did an informal poll here of some jail directors throughout the state while we're sitting. And my sense is now telling me from the responses I'm getting regarding juveniles in their facilities, or rather juveniles not in their facilities, nor have ever been in their facilities. I would like to ask this: if we remove Baltimore City's numbers from this study, what would the study look like? Because my sense is telling me from the responses I'm getting that as often we deal with when I'm down presenting in front of the committee, that I find myself having to us being involved in discussions that really are just focusing on the Baltimore City centric. So if Baltimore City's numbers are, and I could be completely wrong here, it's just my sense of the responses I'm getting from these directors are telling me that this is not a universal problem throughout the state. This may be a problem.
So that does not make sense to me, and I'll tell you why. It's because of of YDC, the Youthful Detention Center. Violations. Yeah, please.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm gonna clarify on that.
Introduce yourself.
Yes, absolutely. So I'm Aubrey Gerhardt. I'm the compliance monitor who monitors the state's compliance with the Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention Act to the feds.
And so I can provide, I've been into each of these facilities. So the Youth Detention Center in Baltimore City is the only youth charged as adults facility in the entire country. But it is in Baltimore City. So that is run by DPSCS. That is a state-run facility. They're only juvenile facility. The rest are all adult facilities, correction. This is going to be detention and correction. So these kids are here pre-trial and post-trial if they're convicted as adults in Baltimore City. So the county facilities, they are organized and run by the Maryland Correctional Administrators Association. And just seeing that MCAA is not accounted for or present here, I'm just going to speak on behalf of what I've seen for them and what they have stated. So with the recommendations in the report, for previous legislative issues, you can see their testimony. And so their testimony is that they do not want children within their facilities because they cannot afford sight and sound separation. And again, it is on a scale throughout the state. So the scale goes from a jurisdiction having an entire tier available for youth males, which they can still see the next tier over with adult males. So that's a scale. There's also a scale of a smaller jurisdiction having one cell open for a child. The child is in there with the screen closed, but seeing or hearing intake happening. They hang out in the intake until they can get out of the facility. And so those will be reported into me. I calculate the violations for the state. And you're right that Baltimore City is skewed just because the violations in the Baltimore City are not at YDC, because YDC is all good. They're the youth. And then it's a scale for the rest of the county facilities.
I've never heard of this place, Lower Eastern Shore Children's Center?
That's a DJS facility. Yeah. And just one more thing, the county jails will take that stance every time, even when we go to them. They do not want to make more space to take kids. They do not provide services. I believe youths with IEPs get education, but otherwise they do not receive education. They may have a case manager. That's going to be the extent of what they get in that adult facility for how long they're in there.
Thank you.
Thank you. In fact, a few years ago, anecdotally, I can share this. I mediated a dispute between the Baltimore County Board of Education and the Baltimore County Correctional Authorities because they were fighting about who had to pay for the IEPs of the 7 or 8 young people who were detained in the Baltimore County Detention Facility. I really want to open it up to other commissioners who haven't had a chance to address the issue.
Aubrey has a question.
Who does?
Aubrey.
Okay.
I don't know if she's. Oh, she's. Oh, no.
Thank you. I was just saying the opposition I'm hearing seems to be equating youth not being subjected to auto charging to the youth being arrested. And I just wanted to make sure the recommendation would require the youth to still be subjected to the normal decision-making process for detention, correct?
I didn't make out that question.
Juvenile would still.
They would still be arrested and detained. It's not changing that. It's just what happens after that.
Oh, no, this has absolutely zero to do with arrest or.
Thanks for clarifying, because it just seems like the concerns we're hearing about, like the victim's perspective, as well as like the concerns for public safety. This doesn't. It doesn't. I was trying to understand where that critique was coming from with regards to this recommendation.
I think she's asking about, is there still some level of accountability? And there would be still a level of accountability, it's just that the children would not be in an adult. So, and I just wanted to bring up a different point, unless someone is disagreeing with what I just answered with Audrey.
Please.
Okay. I just wanted to thank Aubrey for the compliance work that she's done and coming down to Annapolis and reporting on the non-compliance. And she has, if you can share with us, an excellent presentation that she did for MACO this year. And it really lays out the numbers, the data, and everything. And this is you can't get any better data than her eyes because she was right there and she saw it. I've been to the detention center, adult detention center at Jennifer Road, and I've been to the Baltimore City Juvenile Center. I can tell you it's night and day as far as the children and how they are, their activity level, their education level. It's just night and day. When I went to the Jennifer Road, and I know that Aubrey has seen this as well, and that is the screen was there, and I saw them pull down the screen because there were some children passing through. Now, keep in mind, this applies to a female detainee in an adult detention center. So they even said, and just as I was said, the correctional MCCA, the Correctional Officers Administrators Association, they have said repeatedly, not only do we not want the children there, but the children are in segregated or restrictive housing 24. I mean, they have whispered to me afterwards. They said 23, but after testimony, they've come over to me and said, like, frankly, sometimes it's almost as much as 24 hours that a child will be in restrictive housing because they've got to try to comply with separation of sight and sound. So I just wanted to, let you all know exactly. I mean, they're not, like she said, they're not on this commission, but they have spoken to me. They have spoken to Aubrey. I have seen it with my own eyes, and I know some of you all probably have seen it too, where the children are housed with adults, and they're separated as best as they can. But remember, these facilities were never intended to be a facility for children and adults.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other commentary?
I just want to thank the work group for their work and kind of, I guess, frame the report as this is based on the data that they do have, the knowledge that they have gained, and the information that they have, and the synthesis and analysis they've done based on what they have. I think it is a fair recommendation that we look and we make the recommendation to revise the auto charging statutes. It's resulting in more than 1,600 violations that are 6 to 8 times the federal standard. And that Maryland is literally the worst in the country. I don't think anybody on this commission should stand for that. And so I give my full support to this report and to the record.
Anyone else? Good discussion. I will tell you, in all honesty, if I could do one thing better as chair, well, there's a lot I could do better as chair, but the one thing sitting here tonight, as we're about to vote on this proposal, the one thing I regret is that we didn't take a few field trips in our year and a half. And you remember, most of you will recall, I actually promised that we would do that. And I'm promising again. And one of the things that is on my agenda for next year, for 2026, is we are going to make some field trips. And we are going to go to the places that we've heard about, both the juvenile facilities, as well as some of the county jails. And we're going to see for ourselves what the kids experience. We're not going to experience it, but we're going to see it. Okay? Any other?
Hopefully they'll be out by then.
Hope so. Hearing no more requests for comment, I'm prepared to call a vote on the proposal that is properly before the commission for adoption. I will ask first for anyone who is intending to abstain for whatever reason to identify yourself now so that the record can be clear that we have, if we have any abstentions. Secretary Tolentino, Secretary Lopez, Judge Weathersby. Anybody on Zoom? Okay, so understandable, you don't have to give a reason. We all know the reason. It's very obvious. Having considered, fully discussed, debated the proposal from the work group, I will ask for a show of hands of all of those who are in favor of adopting the recommendation of the work group. Please raise your hand. So the record flow will show that there were 10 votes in favor. Please, if you oppose the commission's approval of the work group's recommendation, please raise your hand so that you can be identified. But the record showed that there were 3 nay votes. There is a quorum, and I declare the commission's act to adopt the recommendation. And I congratulate the work group for some really serious, difficult, challenging work. Thank you all so much for a civil, respectful discussion. And I hope going forward, we'll have many more. And I expect we will. Travel safely. And with that, I will call the meeting in adjournment.
All right, let's go get a drink.
Thank you all very much. Thank you all very much. Right on time. Right on time.
That is not.